By the way, I don't think they will, because I don't think Hamas is ultimately serious about a deal. They just keep pushing and pushing and pushing for Israel.
Okay, no consequence.
Right.
Dan Senor, thank you, and our condolences. If you could pass them on to the family.
Thank you, Dan. We got this in New York City.
Why are you out here today? What do you think about this kind of all restarting again?
I think it's horrible. I think it's also extremely disrespectful. It's been a calm summer, but I've been nervous for the students to come back.
So a lot of these schools expecting more anti-Israel protests on campus as the new school year begins. For some of them today, the administrators are walking a line between free speech and student safety. We'll take you there. Coming up, Dana.
Plus, the U.S. government seizing a luxury jet used by Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. The move seen as an escalation in pressure after the country's widely contested national elections.
And a first-round draft pick in San Francisco injured after he took a bullet to the chest. The police officer who saved his life is now speaking out.
Blood coming down, and I see him look down.
Rookie wide receiver Ricky Pearsall will miss at least 4 games as he recovers at home from a gunshot wound through the chest. The police officer who was first at the scene describes what she saw.
I grabbed hold of him really tight, and I looked at him and I said, "Look at me." I said, I know you don't know me, but please trust me. It's not your time. You're going to be okay, okay? God is with us right now. We'll cheer for him. I'm going to get his jersey.
Pearsall was shot Saturday afternoon in a busy shopping strip of downtown San Francisco. Police say the gunman was trying to steal his Rolex.
Be good if they bought his jersey.
Yeah.
Be good if it sold out. It'd be a statement, wouldn't it? Here is New York City now. Universities bracing for scenes like this as the kids go back to class this week. Pro-Palestinian protests expected to resume on campuses, and Jewish students and teachers are on high alert. Paul Moore.
Nothing here for you.
Host of Kennedy Saves the World podcast. Great to have you both. Good morning.
Good morning.
What's going to come of this? All right. Here's the Columbia Task Force on their assessment about what the students reacted to. Students described being shoved, pushed to the ground, berated for showing support for Zionist causes, and watching Israeli flags burn. They recounted seeing drawings of swastikas in their dorms and being denied access to public spaces and opportunities simply because they were Jewish or Israelis. Do the schools now have the backbone to shut this down, Paul?
I sure hope so, because what's very clear is that this has gone beyond the issue of just Gaza. Wherever you stand on the Gaza issue, this has devolved here at home into blatantly anti-Semitic stuff. You literally have a circumstance right now in this century in America where Jewish students going to school in New York City have to worry about being able to get to class without being harassed. And yet, we don't have the kind of hate crime or programmatic enforcement that you would get in almost any other context. And as I've been saying on the air for a long time now, where is DOJ? Because there are commonalities here in the funding and in the organization, and we're going to have this, I believe, could be the October surprise, because it's not just going to be Columbia. And by the way, according to the reporting, Columbia doesn't want NYPD on its campus. So then who's going to handle this?
Yeah.
That university president is new. The Columbia University president had resigned. Moving on, so there's a new one under the microscope. And here's a student from last week. She was here talking about, she's a student body president, actually, saying what she wants. Call for number 2, please.
The university needs to put an end to harassment of students right now. And if the university really wants to protect freedom of speech, it's important to remember it can only occur if everybody is safe enough to speak. Dialogue is the only way to combat misinformation and disinformation, and we have to have opportunities to learn from people who have different perspectives, as opposed to shutting down any opportunity to discuss.
Because aside from it being disruptive and kind of dangerous, you also have the fact that they're supposed to be learning math and English and, talk about studying the humanities or art class, and they don't get a chance.
Yes, this is supposed to be a world-renowned research institution, and you can't do that if you don't have freedom of movement. And this is not dialogue. This is not free speech when you have smoke bombs and vandalism and assaults and, basic civil rights violations. I talked to one of my friends today who went to Columbia, who loved going to Columbia, and I said, would you go there now? And she said, absolutely not. She said, not only has this DEI metastasized into full-blown anti-Semitism, but also for 4 years, it's about $550,000 all in. She said there's no way she could afford it. And the place that she's working now will not even look at the resumes of Ivy League graduates because the degrees don't mean as much because of environments like this, where a lot of employers, it's not just the Bill Ackmans of the world, they look at this and they see a radicalization and really a waste of time. This is not academia. These are not smart kids prepared to take on and save the world. These are bored young people who have no problem trampling on the rights of their fellow students who are terrified.
Let's see if the schools do better this time. We won't hold our breath until they prove it. This is a story that stunned me. All right, New York Post, crime and again, migrants flooding New York's justice system, making up 75% of arrests in Midtown as pathetic sanctuary city laws handcuff cops. Midtown Manhattan is Times Square, Paul. You're well familiar with it. 75% of the crimes are migrant crimes. In Queens, it's lower, it's at 60%, but still, that's a stunning number.
And what's amazing about that is that's what's reported. All right, let's go to shoplifting, for instance. There's heavy pressure not even to report shoplifting because it raises insurance rates. It means that the security guards end up getting fired if they interdict too many incidents because the insurance companies don't want it. You get a serious incident, the police have to shut the place down, do prints and everything else. All kinds of damage. So a lot of stuff just doesn't get reported. Additionally, among migrants, what doesn't get reported is the crimes they commit amongst themselves. And what people don't understand is, let's take
Why are you lifting off?
An aspect of Venezuelan gangs. Venezuelan gang, Maduro wants them out. Big prison break. They're all here. He's not taking them back. They are a prison gang. They know how to do this stuff. It's in their DNA. They know how to control the migrant centers. So in these migrant centers, Randall's Island, various ones we have around town, Randall's Island has a crime rate that is completely off the hook and completely unreported because it's internal. And who do they victimize? There's a prison gang. They know how to do this. They know how to control that territory. And who do they victimize? Women. Where are the women's groups on this? Not only the migrant women, but look at the panoply of crimes that we see that hit the headlines relative to migrants nationwide.
Right.
As the Colorado governor tells us, you know what, you're exaggerating. It's women.
Well, it's a big story, and you're about the only person who's reporting on it.
Well, you are as well, and I appreciate
We
it.
are all together. Kennedy, we owe you one. We went over a little bit with Dan Senor. So
No, it's okay. I'm terrified to walk outside. I'm going to stay here.
So good. You know what? You are welcome. You sit right there. All right, the road to the White House must go through the battlegrounds, and the fight is fierce. How Georgia and Pennsylvania can tip the scales in favor of 270. Karl Rove here.
And we have some hard work then ahead of us.
I call her Comrade Kamala because she's
Leave me alone!
radical, left Marxist. And that's what she is. And she'll destroy our country.
63 days. Here
I
we
gotta
go now.
piss.
Both candidates from over the weekend. I want to show you a few things that are really fascinating. How much money is going to be spent in these battleground states, and what you think about Pennsylvania, what you think about Georgia, for the sake of this exercise. All right. Here is Pennsylvania. This is the projected spending now through Election Day, November 5th. $211 million between Trump and Kamala Harris. Very close spending thus far between those two campaigns. Pop down to Georgia right here. Projected spending $87 million, and we think Harris will probably have an edge in the ad buying, an edge in the money, and it may help her in the end. We'll see whether or not how much that matters. Okay. Now, why are we doing all this? We're doing this because we're trying to figure out. Come here, the path to 270. Wall Street Journal had a very interesting write-up over the weekend. Remember, we've been talking about Georgia as Trump's firewall, talking about Pennsylvania as Kamala Harris's firewall. That's what the Journal did, okay? I'm going to put this into action because the race is the 217. We have Trump at 219. We have Kamala Harris at 225. Now, we're considering here that New Hampshire's not in play, and
Get out of
Minnesota's
my
not in
car.
play, Virginia's not in play. But
Where's
here's what
the
we're seeing,
fucking...
okay? If Trump defends Georgia, he's at 235. If Trump were to hold North Carolina, as he did in 2020, 251, he would only need Pennsylvania to get to 270. I'm going to take these three states off and show you what she is up against in the Harris campaign. If she were to defend Pennsylvania, if she were to sneak in and take Georgia, she would only need one of the 5 other states remaining, okay? Nevada would not do it, but North Carolina would. Michigan would. See how that changes? Wisconsin would at 270. Arizona would. So you see now why there is so much spending now in places like Pennsylvania and Georgia. So come on in, Dana. Come in, Karl Rove, and let's talk about this. What do you want to add to that, Karl? Let's begin.
Well, I want to step back for just a minute. You sort of touched on this. The start of this is in the 7 battleground states, there are 93 electoral college votes. Donald Trump, if you take the states that he won last time around that are not battlegrounds, he has 219. If you take the states that were won last time by Joe Biden that are not battleground states and award them to Harris, it's 223 is what she would start with. So Trump needs 51 electoral college votes and Harris needs 44 in order to get to the 270 magic number. And you're right. I mean, there are a large number of combinations that you can use to get there. One part that we didn't talk about is that 2 states, Maine and Nebraska, divide their electoral college vote by congressional district. And in order to win, the Democrats generally think they have to take the Nebraska, the Omaha seat. And Republicans think that if they've got to win, if they're going to win, they need to take the upper 2/3 of Maine, the 2nd congressional district, which is far more conservative than the 1st district, which is in the south and southeast part of the state.
Talk to us about this balancing act. Here's Politico. The headline is, Harris puts her Biden balancing act on display in Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris doesn't want Joe Biden's baggage, but she's also counting on him to help her win the election. How do you manage that?
Well, look, I think this was, I think the article was a little bit off. If I were the Harris campaign, I'd say we got to get him out there so that his feelings are not hurt. He can help us maybe in Pennsylvania because that's where he grew up. But let's get it done and get it out of the way so that we can say we've done it. I think they wanted to get it done on Labor Day, give the president a chance to be on the campaign trail. I think it is highly unlikely that we're going to see much of him, if any, future appearances on the campaign trail.
Carl, I want to share some video that came from Joint Base Andrews yesterday. Now, before we roll, I've never seen this before. I've never seen a major politician get out of a car with reporters standing several feet away. The jet engines are whirring in the background, and she's got headphones on, and apparently she is on a telephone call. So if you're shouting a question, you're not going to get it in. And part of the reason we bring this up is Tim Walz the day before turned and walked away from that question about the hostages being executed in Gaza. And I don't know what you think of this, Carl, but I mean, this is like the old Paris
Leave me
Hilton,
alone.
you know, walking through a crowd of people.
Not
with
you,
a cell
Bobby.
phone to
You
their
go
ear.
boy.
Now, that's my move too, and I don't want
You
to talk
go
to
boy.
somebody.
Okay, well,
You're a go boy.
Yeah, look, I'm not familiar with Paris Hilton's habits, but let me tell you, that looked a little weird to me. I mean, it really was that call so important of Air Force 2 revving up? I mean, no, this was a deliberate attempt to avoid having things shouted at her and being forced to ignore them. But look, she's very cocooned candidate. She's surrounded by people who want to, at this point, keep her from having much interaction with the press. At some point, she's got to give way to that and be more fluid. If she's not, she's going to suffer over the course of the next 60 some odd days.
Look at this call for #1 Quinnipiac poll with Pennsylvania very close for her at 50, him at 47. That's obviously within the margin of error. How important is this state for both parties?
Well, it could come down to whoever wins Pennsylvania wins the election. And, you know, what's interesting is Mark Halperin, the sort of Uber analyzer, here's what he puts the most likely Harris states. And Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia, he thinks
Dude,
are
you're not welcome.
1, 2, 3, then Nevada, then Arizona. Interestingly,
Stop.
Pennsylvania down here.
Mm-hmm.
And if Donald Trump can take North Carolina and Pennsylvania, these are the two, the two of the three biggest states. 19 electoral votes, 16 electoral votes, 16 in Georgia as well. But if he takes those, that's a good start towards getting to 270, even though he's got to have 51 votes that he needs to pick up. She's got to have 44. If he takes these two big states, then, you know, look, if he wins Georgia, it's over. You know, it's this election could come down to who wins Pennsylvania and who wins Georgia.
All right.
Thank you, Carl.
9
Good
weeks
stuff.
from today, we will be having the election.
I think Paris Hilton's doing something today. But I couldn't.
I'm telling you, I love that move.
You know what we
When
could
you're
do?
like, oh, sorry, I'm on a call.
Yeah, we could do Hammer Celebrity News with him.
Okay.
I mean, I'd
We might just have a whole show of
date
Hammer
to be
Celebrity
named soon.
News.
Thank you, Carl. We'll talk to you later in the
Bye,
week.
Carl.
Nice to see you.
Dana reads sports.
And one team is caught in the crosshairs. Posters popping up across Philadelphia appear to show the Eagles team endorsing Vice President Harris for president. But the team quickly dismissing the rumors, tweeting out, "We are aware counterfeit political ads are being circulated and are working with our advertising partner to have them removed."
About that, a little trickeration, I think they call that, right?
Yeah.
You're familiar
You
with
might
the
see
word?
this in other states.
We shall. Okay, there is a big story developing that we want to get to, and we're going to talk to the mom of one of those killed at Abbey Gate. And here is the father talking about his child as well.
Air Force 2 revving up. I mean, no, this was a deliberate attempt to avoid having things shouted at her and being forced to ignore them. But look, she's very cocooned candidate. She's surrounded by people who want to, at this point, keep her from having much interaction with the press. At some point, she's got to give way to that and be more fluid. If she's not, she's going to suffer over the course of the next 60 some odd days.
Look at this call for number one Quinnipiac poll with Pennsylvania very close. Her at 50, him at 47. That's obviously within the margin of error. How important is this state for both parties?
Well, it could come down to whoever wins Pennsylvania wins the election. And, what's interesting is Mark Halperin, the sort of Uber analyzer, here's what he puts the most likely Harris states. And Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia, he thinks are 1, 2, 3, then Nevada, then Arizona. Interestingly enough, Pennsylvania down here. Mm-hmm. And if Donald Trump can take North Carolina and Pennsylvania, these are the two, the two of the three biggest states. 19 electoral votes, 16 electoral votes, 16 in Georgia as well. But if he takes those, that's a good start towards getting to 270, even though he's got to have 51 votes that he needs to pick up. She's got to have 44. If he takes these two big states, then, look, if he wins Georgia, it's over. It's this election could come down to who wins Pennsylvania and who wins Georgia.
All right.
Thank you, Carl.
9 weeks from today, we will be having the election.
I think Paris Hilton's doing something today, but I couldn't.
I'm telling you, I love that move.
You know what we
When
could
you're
do?
like, oh, sorry, I'm on the call.
Yeah, we could do Hammer Celebrity News with him.
Okay.
I mean,
We might just have a whole show of
date
Hammer
to be
Celebrity
named soon.
News.
Thank you, Carl. We'll talk to you later in the
Bye,
week.
Carl.
Nice to see you.
Dana reads sports.
And one team is caught in the crosshairs. Posters popping up across Philadelphia appear to show the Eagles team endorsing Vice President Harris for president. But the team quickly dismissing the rumors, tweeting out, "We are aware counterfeit political ads are being circulated and are working with our advertising partner to have them removed."
About that, a little trickeration, I think they call that, right?
Yeah.
You're familiar
You
with
might
the
see
word?
this in other states.
We shall. Okay, there is a big story developing that we want to get to, and we're going to talk to the mom of one of those killed at Abbey Gate. And here is the father talking about his child as well.
Kamala Harris wants to introduce a new tax on the mega rich. Is this a good idea, or will it unleash a monster that comes for the middle class? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Matt Gnesta. As you might have heard, Vice President and presidential candidate Kamala Harris is bringing joy to the American people. Sweet, infectious, overwhelming Marge Simpson with a pixie cut looking joy. One way she's bringing joy is by promising to fix the economy. And one of the ways she wants to do that is by backing U.S. President Joe Biden's 2025 budget proposal to tax unrealized capital gains. Everybody, and I mean everybody, was just overwhelmed with joy at that announcement. There was so much joy that people couldn't help but sing the plan's praises as voodoo economics and beyond insane, which I think is just plant-based insane. Ah, yes, nothing beats the joy of freaking out over what could go wrong with the American economy. First, it might be helpful to explain exactly what unrealized capital gains are, unless you want to just freak out about something you don't fully understand, which has basically become the national pastime at this point. Unrealized capital gains are increases in the cash value of something you own but haven't sold yet. Here's a real-world example. Say you bought a stock worth $10, and the next year the value of that stock you own has increased to $15. You just saw an unrealized capital gain of $5. Way to go, savvy investor. If you sold that stock, that would be a realized capital gain, and you have to pay taxes on that $5 you made. But taxing unrealized gains would mean taxing that $5 now before you sell it. And what if that stock goes back down after you already paid your taxes? Which I imagine would be a headache for people in crypto, since their projected future income is somewhere between $1 million and $0. This is why America doesn't typically tax unrealized gains. And it turns out this works out well for the ultra wealthy. The ultra wealthy tend to have most of their money in stocks or other investments, not actual cash. What they do is use unrealized capital gains to circumvent taxes in a scheme dubbed Buy, Borrow, Die, which also sounds like a fire James Bond title.
The ultra wealthy buy an asset or build a company or inherit a fortune. As long as they don't sell, they owe no taxes. They borrow against their holdings and the bank gives them a really good deal.
I'll loan you $10 million with only 3% interest. But if you take a $10 million salary from your company, you'll owe almost 37% to the IRS.
So the ultra wealthy use loan money to fund their lifestyles. That's how a billionaire can live the most luxurious life imaginable while reporting little to no taxable income. And their heirs can inherit stocks and other assets tax-free.
So the ultra wealthy are avoiding taxes. This feels deeply unfair to the rest of us who are constantly paying taxes on our hard-earned money. And maybe Harris and Biden have the right instincts, fix the loopholes in our tax system. But just because something feels unfair doesn't mean any solution will make things better. And a lot of experts are concerned that an unrealized capital gains tax on the rich might end up affecting everybody else, including the middle class.
What that means is that if you have a house and your house has accrued in value since the time that you bought it, let's say you bought it last year, it was 500 grand. Now it is 600 grand. The federal government wishes to tax you $25,000 for the increase in the value of your property, even though you haven't sold it. That's what it means.
So for anyone out there afraid you'll never be able to afford buying a home, if this is true, you'd never be able to afford keeping a home either. More joy. To be crystal clear though, investors.com notes that Harris hasn't proposed taxing unrealized capital gains for everyday Americans. NBC News reports that the proposal backed by Harris would only apply to a narrow and very wealthy slice of the population, people whose net worth is at least $100 million. That's just over 10,000 people in the US. In other words, the richest 0.01%. But won't someone speak up for them? If they have to pay these taxes, they may only be able to afford 5 yachts instead of 6. Especially because this is an election cycle, fact checkers have made a point of emphasizing how Harris's tax proposal only applies to individuals with a net worth above $100 million. And they claim that collecting tax on paper profit is not unfair or impossible. I'm not worried about it being impossible. Anything is possible. I'm more worried about whether or not it's dumb, because so many government plans are extremely dumb. But I'm glad they told me it's not unfair, because I really wasn't sure. This tax does raise some serious questions, though, doesn't it? What happens if assets lose value? That happens all the time. Like this wax figure of Sean Diddy Combs. Collectors would have paid top dollar for it once. Now the best you can do is keep it in front of your home to scare away intruders. But let's say that the US government goes ahead with passing the Biden-Harris proposal to tax unrealized capital gains. And it really does just apply to these guys. How would the US economy respond? Keep in mind that wealth is often a lot more interconnected than people realize. Imagine if the likes of Warren Buffett and George Soros had to sell off tons of stock to pay for their taxes. Think about what kind of effect that would have. When there's a big sell-off, everybody else's stock loses value. If you have any money in the stock market, including a retirement account, this could make the value of your stocks go down too. So while it may be technically true that Harris's proposed tax on unrealized capital gains wouldn't directly tax most Americans, it could still hit people's savings quite hard in more ways than one. So as you can see, this is a complex issue that's bringing out a lot of emotions. None more so, of course, than joy. And of course, if the stock market drops every time a billionaire has to pay taxes, how would this affect economic growth and innovation? And is taxing stocks even constitutional? These are all questions that deserve answers, especially since it has the possibility of becoming a slippery slope to something even dumber. I'll tell you after the break. Welcome back. Kamala Harris is proposing a tax targeting only about 10,000 ultra-wealthy people. But while that's the case now, it could easily affect a lot more people down the line. Why? Because it sets a precedent that the government can tax people's investments before they sell them. Need evidence of what happens when you set a bad precedent? I gotcha. Look no further than the modern income tax. In 1913, the government passed the 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. That amendment gave Congress the power to tax everybody's income. An article in the New York Times from 1913 says that when the states were besought to pass the income tax amendment to the Constitution, it was vehemently represented that such a levy would be imposed only in time of war or in other grave national crisis. That's how people talked in 1913. Now, anyway, that turned out to be a lie. Although I suppose you could argue that America is constantly in a grave national crisis. But even back in 1913, income taxes definitely weren't like what we see today. Here's a tax return from 1921 that I saw in the American History Museum in DC. A person earning a little over $2,000, or around $36,000 in today's money, only had to pay around 1% in taxes. In San Francisco, of all places. As a comparison, for a single filer today, if you earn $36,000, you'd pay more than 10% in federal taxes. And that doesn't even include state taxes, Social Security, and Medicare. A lot of people say income tax is theft, but there's actually honor among thieves. With taxes this high, it feels more like a mugging. Once income tax became a staple of American life, individual income taxes started to become the single largest tax revenue for the U.S. federal government. It shouldn't be controversial to say that once you give the government a taste of something, especially power over your money, it's very hard for them to let go of it. Politicians are basically addicts. So maybe Hunter Biden's antics are just learned behavior. So the biggest danger with a new kind of tax is that it starts out only affecting the ultra wealthy, but eventually the government decides to apply it to the regular wealthy. And pretty soon after that, to the middle class too. Just kidding. By then there won't be a middle class. What do you think? Should there be a tax on unrealized capital gains anyway, as long as the government promises not to abuse it? Leave a comment below. If you like America Uncovered's nonpartisan take on news and politics, be sure to subscribe, smash that like button, and share this video with your friends. And here's another video YouTube's algorithm god recommends. Check it out and let us know how the god is working for you. Once again, I'm Matt Gnezda. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.
Good day to you.
Good to have you, or good to be with you, I should say, John. Excuse me. I'm
good to be with
Jillian
you, too.
Turner. You know what I mean. Sandra is off today. This is America Report. So right now we are getting these new pictures into our newsroom. They also are showing Columbia's famed alma mater sculpture covered. You can see there in red paint. The statue sits very prominently on the steps of the school's library on the main quad.
The protests come after Israeli forces recovered the body of 6 hostages, including Israeli-American Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who was executed at close range by Hamas fighters in Gaza.
One anti-Israel protester there in New York City was caught on camera today reacting to the grim discovery like this.
An American was executed yesterday by terrorists. Are you okay? He deserved it? Sure. Why is that? What business does he have? What business is he at a music festival dancing with his friends? Yeah? Israel killed him?
We'll get reaction from former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren, in just a moment.
First, though, we go to Alexis McAdams. She is live right outside the gates of Columbia University. Alexis, you've been speaking to these protesters all morning long. What are they telling you?
Well, Jillian, I speak to the ones that will talk to me, right? Some of them didn't want to talk until they put their mask on. We'll get to more on that in a second. But
Get a fucking away from me!
Protesters climbed to a couple hundred. Now they're marching around the campus, heading to Barnard School here near Columbia University, that Ivy League school that has been embattled with having protests pop up for months. Feels like deja vu being back out here again this morning. But hey, it was supposed to be a new school year. Take a look at this arrest that just happened moments ago. Watch.
As a Jewish student, do you feel safe walking around Columbia University's campus?
I do not. I'm a visible Jew. I'm Orthodox. I wear a Star of David around my neck. I know that's putting a target on my back. And coming to terms with that reality is actually quite frightening, but I know I can't stand down.
If you saw what happened last year at Columbia and you're supporting Israel, why'd you want to go to school here?
I actually had already committed to the school here. I applied early decision, so I already had committed pretty long before the protests really got big. And I think it's our civil duty to show up and show that we are not going to stand for this sort of hatred.
Okay, so 2 arrests and counting, Jillian and John, right now on campus. And look at this, red paint thrown all over this statue today. That red paint, according to the protesters, symbolizing the blood they say is on President Joe Biden's hands, Vice President Kamala Harris's hands, and they say the entire University of Columbia, who has not divested from Israel, according to this group. As campus staff tries to power wash this away near the university's library, things continue. And it's not just on the campus, but across the Big Apple. Yesterday, we walked for about 7 miles with about 5,000 protesters. You can see it here during a pro-Palestinian protest there in Manhattan. One protester was seen carrying a Hamas flag. Others yelling out, "Long live Hamas."
For the people that were screaming, long live Hamas or death to the Jews that are involved in these protests on this side, I heard that. But I'm just asking you, because that's not what everybody says, right?
I do support the Palestinian resistance against their own, ethnic cleansing. It's been ethnic cleansing since 1948. They actually have a right under international law to armed resistance.
Yeah, and so when you ask some of the protesters, why are people screaming these anti-Semitic comments, they'll say they didn't hear it, but we did hear it yesterday. And then seeing a person walk around with a Hamas flag not far from where 9/11 happened in New York City is pretty disturbing for most people when you watch it. At Columbia, that new report, John and Jillian, that came out just the other day was pretty damning. It's from the Anti-Semitism Task Force at this Ivy League school, saying that Jewish students last year were spit on, pushed up against walls, all because of their religion. So we'll have to see how this year starts off, but not off to a great start.
They had their Star of David necklaces stripped from them as well. Alexis McAdams watching it for us up there at 116th Street and Broadway. You're an alumnus of Columbia.
I mean, I don't recognize.
A lot of these years ago.
I don't recognize these scenes. I mean, I went there, I graduated in 2006, so a long time ago now, but I don't recognize.
You watched my men be exhausted and did nothing.
And would again, my lord. I was unarmed, unarmored, and surrounded by Lannister swords.
When you look at me, do you see a hero?
What madness led you to tell the Queen you had learned the truth about Joffrey's birth?
Madness of mercy. She might save her children.
Ah, the children. It's always the innocents who suffer. It wasn't the wine that killed Robert, nor the boar. The wine slowed him down, and the boar ripped him open. But it was your mercy that killed the king. I trust you know you're a dead man, Lord Eddard.
Queen can't kill me. Can't hold a brother.
The wrong, brother, sadly, and lost to her. Your wife has let the imp slip through her fingers.
If that's true, then slit my throat and be done with it.
Not today, my lord.
You watch my men being slaughtered. They did
The
nothing.
fuck game is Varys playing there?
I was unarmed, unarmored, and surrounded by Lannister swords.
When you look at me, do you see a hero?
What madness led you to tell the Queen you had learned the truth about Joffrey's birth?
The madness of mercy. She might save her children.
Ah, the children. It's always the innocents who suffer. It wasn't the wine that killed Robert, nor the boar. The wine slowed him down, and the boar ripped him open. But it was your mercy that killed the king. I trust you know you're a dead man, Lord Eddard.
Queen can't kill me. Can't hold a brother.
The wrong, brother, sadly, and lost to her. Your wife has let the imp slip through her fingers.
If that's true, then slit my throat and be done with it.
Not today, my lord.
You watch my men being slaughtered and did nothing.
And would again, my lord. I was unarmed, unarmored, and surrounded by Lannister.
Did he wake up and decide, you know what? Today's the day. Today's the day I'm going to go ahead and make this, the rest of my life will be about this moment. I'm going to call a black guy, a monkey. And I'm going to put it in writing. Is there a single person who actually believes that that's a plausible scenario? And yet the media uncritically reports on the customer's trauma. And then he makes his pitch for a lawsuit, which is really a shakedown. He's essentially telling Chick-fil-A to pay up, or he's going to smear them as much as possible. If you watch the video, this guy recorded in a Chick-fil-A, which I won't play because it's painful to listen to, but he immediately demands the employee loses his job, and then he promises to make the clip go viral.
What's going on, brother? Hold on one second. Let me pause my video.
As soon as he...
What's going on? Yeah, I'm good. I'm a member of the church. I'm just sitting here looking for a job. I actually don't know who the bishop is. I haven't met them yet. I'm from Huntington Beach Steak in Southern California. Fair? Actually, I don't know who the prophet is at the moment. It used to be Gordon B. Hinckley. Yeah, I've been up. I'm a member of the church. I'm a member of the church. I might not know who the prophet is at the moment, but that doesn't mean I'm not a member of the church. Well, okay. Yeah. My name is Devlin Sloan. No, I haven't talked to any of the bishops. I just got... Oh, give me a break. I'm not talking crap to you. I have nothing but respect for you. I'm looking for a job and I'm making money. Where am I gonna go? Yeah. Yeah, I'm an epileptic, and I have a. Dude, the church. Look, I'm an Eagle Scout. The church isn't going to give a crap about that. Okay. And no, I don't want to press the issue. I respect you. That's fine. Okay. Yeah. That's fine. Well, you guys won't hold me long. I know that, and you know that. Well, I mean, I'll just talk to the state president and the area president. Like I am a member of the church. You're being you're being difficult for no reason, and it's all good. I get it. You got a job. Do your job. You won't see me again. Well, you are giving me strife. You know, there's 4 people that sleep here at night. Are you a member of the church? Are you a member of the church? Well, I'm just asking. Look, I'm a member of the Ludlow family from Nauvoo. I'm not I grew up in Southern California in the Huntington Beach steak. I'm not a liar. I grew up in Fountain Valley. I went to Cal State Fullerton. My divorce, COVID, cryptocurrency, and the George Floyd riots in Portland kicked my ass. Yeah. I'm not a dope fiend. I don't do drugs. I'm not a piece of shit. You don't got to worry about me. Well, I mean, every time I talk to one of you, every time I talk to someone here, that's how I get treated. No. Actually, your law enforcement, the boys in blue here, have been nothing. I have nothing but respect for them. No, I know. I'm just saying. Everywhere I go, I got somebody jamming me up my backside about. It's not like I'm sitting here smoking fentanyl. It ain't like I'm sitting here doing meth. I don't do drugs. That's not my thing. Well, that's what I'm going to do when the bishop's here. I'm going to talk to him because I'm in the area. I just don't know who he is. Yeah, I'm assuming it's mutual. I'm assuming it's mutual young men's or young women's today. So one of the elders will be here. I'm an elder. So I just need to talk to someone to get connected. Thank you, officer. God, I just want I want a small personal ward like I grew up in Fountain Valley. I don't want a big ass steak like Huntington Beach. I just want I want a small family ward. Thank you. I've already got jammed up because of my fucking alcoholic attitude. Well, it's graveyard. Well, then what that tells me, that was fucking fabulous. Fucking shut the fuck up, dude. Like, well, second time I've seen you sitting here. Oh, this ought to be interesting. Oh. Well, hey.
As soon as he saw an opportunity, he had the lawyer on the phone as soon as he possibly could. So this is inexcusable behavior on the part of the customer, obviously, but it's also predictable. This is the kind of response that a lot of people will have when everyone in the media is telling them at every opportunity that they're a victim because of their skin color. It's what happens when some people are bombarded with lies about how oppressed they are. And that's happening constantly, right out in the open. The other day, for example, the actor and singer Tyrese had a conversation with the race-hustling ambulance chaser Ben Crump. And Tyrese made a claim that's clearly false and also clearly designed to stoke as much racial animosity and resentment as possible. And of course, Ben Crump, the alleged lawyer, just sits and agrees with it. But this is really an extraordinary claim. I want you to listen to this. Here it is.
President Biden and Kamala Harris signed an Asian hate crime bill, which makes it beyond illegal to ever purposely and maliciously do anything to anybody in the Asian community. And there was a spike in crimes and criminal behavior in and around COVID, allegedly and specifically motivated by Trump. And so everybody started treating Asians, beating them, killing them, shooting them, stabbing them, hurting them. And then he gets into the White House, skips over every black and brown Mexican and Latino that have been getting killed like flies, and he makes it a law. Asian hate crime bill. It's signed into law. So whether you're a police officer or a regular civilian, if you wake up on a Wednesday and say, he's Asian, a woman or a man, let's go do something bad to them, which God forbid would ever happen again. But it is a crime bill that was signed into law that protects Asians at all costs. Where is that same law to be signed into law when it comes to black and brown people? Because what you're doing is, President Biden and Kamala Harris, what you're doing is you're saying that black and brown people will continue to be disposable.
So Tyrese claims bizarrely that there are no hate crime laws protecting black and brown people. Never mind that every hate crime law protects those groups, and most of them were written specifically to protect those groups. Just last week, Kamala was once again promoting the Anti-Lynching Act the Biden administration signed into law a couple of years ago. That was yet another hate crime bill written specifically to protect black people from a form of violence that, by the way, none of them have suffered.
Come back in the
least
afternoon
40
after
years.
he's off.
Also, as I covered last week, lynching is already illegal about 3 times over, so they made it illegal a 4th time. As to the specific legislation that Tyrese is talking about, he's wrong about that too. There was no bill that only punishes anti-Asian hate crimes. The COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, which is apparently what he's referring to, applied to all forms of hate crime. It just made it easier to report and catalog these incidents. And a lot of people pointed this out online, so it's not a particularly convincing lie either. And as I've discussed before, this is all a moot point anyway, because hate crimes shouldn't be an actual category of crime. For one thing, a lot of crimes committed against other people typically involve some form of hatred, so we don't need a special category for certain kinds of hatred. And for another thing, hate crimes aren't prosecuted or reported with any kind of consistency. Those are legitimate complaints you can make about hate crime legislation, but the idea that they don't protect Black and brown people is just complete nonsense. In the Ahmaud Arbery case, after the state secured the murder convictions, the feds went back and prosecuted those defendants for hate crimes because of racist text messages they had sent before the murder about someone other than Ahmaud Arbery. It was an entirely separate prosecution. They got guilty pleas and then additional life sentences because of it. But apparently those hate crime laws don't exist, according to Tyrese and Ben Crump. This is the same kind of race hustling that Barack Obama specialized in, but these people aren't anywhere near as good at it. Obama could look the camera in the eye and wag his finger and say whatever he wanted.
I'm gonna sit here and steal power all I want.
Hate crime laws only protect white people if he wanted to, but Tyrese and Ben Crump aren't so gifted. They're not anywhere near as coherent, so their pandering is just too obvious. In fact, right now there aren't many
There's got to be another beer here.
capable of pulling off the Obama-style hustle. Kamala Harris certainly isn't capable of it. Even in scripted moments, pretty much the only kinds of moments that her handlers will allow her to have, even those moments she can't do. So take a look at these two clips from Kamala Harris events. This is just yesterday.
Honest engine.
One is in Detroit.
After that fucking pig.
And the other is in Pennsylvania. And
Dealing
they're
with that pig.
just a few hours apart. So see if you can notice any differences.
You better thank a union member. For the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time. Thank unions for sick leave. Thank unions for paid family leave. Thank unions for your vacation time.
You better thank a union member. You better thank a union member for vacation time. It sounds just as authentic when I do it, but maybe even more. I think I sound a little bit more authentic than Kamala Harris does. I could pull that off better than she could. You better thank a union member. You got to get that. You better thank a union member. You got to get that kind of. There's a little flow to it that she's trying to do. And we're used to seeing this kind of thing. And so obviously the Detroit speech, she's once again trying to sound urban, but instead ends up sounding like foghorn leghorn. She's trying to connect with Black voters by changing her accent and tone, but ironically, she
at least if I play War Thunder,
a little bit like a plantation owner,
not in the middle of
antebellum
something.
South. Meanwhile, in the Pennsylvania clip, she just sounds
I'm gonna send you over here this week.
And Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and Bill Clinton did this kind of thing all the time, but they at least waited like a few days before dropping their accents. They didn't leave the urban environment and immediately start speaking normally again. And you usually don't get like the exact same lines that you can compare side by side that way. So this may be the single worst attempt at quote unquote code switching or whatever you want to call it that has ever been attempted. But Kamala attempted it anyway. So whatever this is, whether it's desperation or incompetence or both, it's a clear sign that the Democrats aren't going to change their tactics just because they don't have the talent to pull it off. They still have no problem being completely shameless in their attempts to divide this country along racial lines. So that means the media will continue to tell us that,
of course, there's some pig.
Racist. Ben Crump will nod along as an actor lies about hate crimes. And Kamala Harris will do everything she can to prevent people from realizing that she grew up in a wealthy neighborhood in Montreal. Put it all together, and it's clear that the left's racial pandering is now so overt that it manages to insult the intelligence of the people that they're pandering to. This is inevitably what happens when the demand for racism outstrips the supply. You get hoax after hoax after hoax. And eventually the hoaxes start looking a bit too familiar and a bit too obvious. That's what we're seeing now. The fraud is clearer than it's ever been. And if Kamala Harris made anything clear yesterday. It's that she's incapable of hiding it. Are you still struggling with back taxes or unfiled returns? The IRS is escalating collections by adding 20,000 new agents and sending millions of demand letters. Handling this alone can be a huge mistake and cost you thousands of dollars. In these challenging times, your best offense is with